creative energy behind what's happening in a municipality is a great idea. Gubernatorial candidate Jumaane Williams was in the Finger Lakes this week calling for an end to cryptocurrency mining. Advocates are calling for a moratorium, largely because of the alleged environmental impacts of the Greenwich facility down in Dresden. Question, of course, outcome aside, since I think this is another one that's going to be largely decided in Albany without local input for that regard. How has coverage been of this issue? Because you and I were just talking the other day in the newsroom about how our reporters are approaching this and what they should or shouldn't be doing, how some of the press releases, when you're dealing with a really complex issue like this, become a little more advocate-y and a little less objective in terms of just being a pure announcement. So what do you think has been on the good side and the bad side of coverage, not just here, but across the Finger Lakes?
Well, we were talking about, we get press releases, news releases from places like Greenwich and from Seneca Meadows for that matter, highlighting their charitable donations, or in the case of Greenwich, we just got one saying that they'd be paying more in taxes this year. And so the question is always, is that legitimate news or is that promotion for these controversial places? And it's a little bit of both. I guess I might be in a minority here. I guess I don't understand the whole opposition to cryptocurrency. Greenwich is a power plant. They generate electricity. If we didn't have Bitcoin, we'd still be generating electricity, maybe not specifically at this plant. And for some reason, it just seems like this specific purpose angers people. I think a lot of it, frankly, I don't think many people understand cryptocurrency. I've begun to get sort of a basic grasp of it. So, I mean, to me, power plants are going to generate power. That's what they're there for. Why do we care if Greenwich is generating electricity to run electric cars or our heater when it gets down to zero or to do Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think that the bigger issue is the intensity at which the facility has to run and the impact that has on nearby Seneca Lake. And, you know, from the coverage standpoint, my biggest issue is, you know, everybody runs these press releases. Everybody does, whether you're the weekly newspaper, whether you're the daily newspaper, whether you're one of the television stations in Rochester, Elmira, or Syracuse, daily newspapers in like Ithaca. Everybody is running this content. And it seems to me that you either have to have an all or none approach if you're going to do it objectively. And then on top of that, if the goal is to not see the opposition in the news at all, then you're making an argument from a failed point of view. You're trying to convince editors to not run something that is, and we had this issue play out. My point is this. I don't think anyone's really been covering the Greenwich issue very well outside of us. Thanks to Peter Mantius, we have probably the best coverage, critical coverage of Greenwich 2 years running-ish. And I don't think that it makes a huge difference, again, one way or another, how we frame individual stories or what is happening in kind of like the day-to-day of coverage of this issue, because, again, Albany is going to make the decision, and Albany doesn't care what Finger Lakes 1 runs, just like they don't care what the newspapers run or what any of the TV stations in any of the markets say either. They're going to make a decision that's based on what the state of New York needs. And the fate of this moratorium rests largely on whether, you know, the Democrats in Albany can get behind it. You know, so this is kind of one of those scenarios where the rest of New York State is kind of at the mercy of Albany. And it doesn't really go further than that, I don't think.
And in terms of media coverage, there are a couple of things in play here. One is there are many people who are convinced to their core that we in the media have a stake in the outcome of certain issues. If we run a story that says anything nice about Greenwich, it means we're in the tank, we're in their pocket, we want, you know, and spoiler alert, we don't. For the most part, I mean, I don't live anywhere near there. I don't especially care whether they make Bitcoin or not. I don't think I'll probably ever have one. that's the first thing. And then the other thing with an issue like this is the Greenwich folks won't talk. I mean, they'll send us news releases saying we did nice thing, we gave money to the Girl Scouts, we're paying more taxes. But other than that, they don't want to engage because they see it in their best interests. The less that is said about this issue, the happier they are. So we get the environmental people who want to talk, and so then people say, well, you're a greenie.
Right.
So, if we can only report on what we can report on, if a side of a contentious issue doesn't want to talk to us, then there's a good chance you're going to see more from the other side. I mean, that's just the way it works. And the other thing is there are people who believe that if they don't talk to you, you can't do the story because we have to be fair. So if I don't talk to you, you can't talk to the other side. And no, that's not how it works either.
Well, and I also think and this is kind of a bigger themed thing, and we'll get into it more in another episode, but I think there's this misconception about the impact of journalism. Like, there's this idea that if a journalist spends months working on this deep rooted story, and it's like 3,000 words long, and it's hard hitting, and it really shows how this company is bad, that it's going to somehow change public opinion, or it's going to somehow change the outcome. And the reality, whether you call it unfortunate or fortunate, is that just isn't how it works. People's attention spans are shorter than ever, and just as the case are the people who criticize when we run a Greenwich press release, or the opposite. The attention span is just, it's not there.
20 minutes later, there's a Free Britney story, and we've moved on.
And you can't change that. Like, you can't take that out of journalism now. So in my mind, I think if asking me like what good coverage looks like, I think good coverage is that continued, shorter, stay on it, keep it in the forefront, so to speak. And that is where the responsibility lies with an organization like ours, or frankly, any organization at all that's sharing news. Let's get into some of the interviews that you've done this week, because you have had some awesome interviews in the last week.